My wife is in Hawaii with her lover while I'm at our year-old son's funeral. She texted, sorry, important business meeting. What she doesn't know is, the morning sun cast long shadows through the stained glass windows of St. Michael's Church, painting the white casket in fragments of blue and gold. Michael Sullivan stood alone beside it, his trembling fingers adjusting the small blue dinosaur resting atop the polished surface. The toy, a velociraptor. Tommy had always insisted on correcting anyone who called it just a dinosaur, looked out of place against the formal arrangement of white roses and lilies. He would have hated all these flowers, Michael whispered, his voice rough from hours of silence. Tommy had been allergic to lilies, something his wife should have remembered. If she'd bothered to help with the arrangements, his phone vibrated in his pocket. The screen lit up with her message, sorry, I can't make it to the service. Important business meeting in Seattle? Give Tommy a kiss from me. Love you both. Michael's fingers tightened around the phone until his knuckles turned white. Seattle. Another lie to add to her growing collection. He'd seen the airline confirmation email in their shared account. She was in Maui, probably watching the sunrise from some luxury resort's balcony while their son lay cold in his casket. Mr. Sullivan? The funeral director's soft voice interrupted his thoughts. We should begin seating the family soon. Michael nodded, unable to trust his voice. People had started arriving. Tommy's teachers from kindergarten, neighbors who'd watched him chase butterflies in their front yard just last month, distant relatives who'd flown in despite the short notice. They filed in quietly, their faces wearing identical masks of grief and sympathy. His mother appeared at his elbow, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. The flowers are beautiful, Michael. Tommy was allergic to lilies, he said flatly. She touched his arm. Where is she? Business meeting, in Seattle. The lie tasted bitter on his tongue. His mother's face hardened. She should be here? Her son. She broke off, pressing her lips together. I know, Mom. Michael stared at the casket. Believe me, I know. More people arrived. Tommy's best friend from kindergarten came with his parents. The little boy clutching a hand-drawn picture of two stick figures playing with dinosaurs. Michael accepted it with murmured thanks, his heart clenching at the wobbly letters spelling out best friends forever. His phone buzzed again. The meeting's running long. I'll call as soon as I can. Stay strong, strong. Like she had been strong through Tommy's illness, through the endless nights in the hospital when their son had cried for his mommy, not understanding why she wasn't there. Through the final days when Michael pushed the memory away. Not now. Not here. The priest approached, prayer book in hand. Shall we begin? The service passed in a blur of hymns and prayers. Michael stood when required, sat when prompted, his responses automatic. His focus kept drifting to the empty space beside him where she should have been, to the phone in his pocket that occasionally buzzed with her lies. In times of deepest sorrow, the priest was saying, we find comfort in knowing that Tommy is now in God's embrace. Michael's mind wandered to Tommy's last coherent day in the hospital. His son had asked for her again. He'd made another excuse again. Mommy's working hard, buddy. She'll come see you soon. The lie had felt like ground glass in his throat. His sister-in-law read a poem about angels. His brother spoke about Tommy's infectious laugh and dinosaur obsession. Michael sat through it all, his face a mask of grief that hid the inferno building inside him. Got a tea the graveside. They handed him a white rose to place on the casket. The small crowd watched in respectful silence as he stepped forward. Instead of the rose, he placed Tommy's favorite book, the Big Book of Dinosaurs, next to the blue velociraptor. Sweet dreams, buddy, he whispered. Daddy loves you. His phone vibrated one final time, thinking of you both. Meeting running long. Call me later. Michael looked at the growing mound of earth that would soon cover his son. Tommy had been his reason for silence, for swallowing the bitter pills of her betrayal month after month, for maintaining the facade of a happy family even as he gathered evidence, documented her lies, and quietly prepared for the day he would tear her carefully constructed world apart. Now, standing in the cemetery while she lounged on a beach thousands of miles away, he felt the last threads of mercy snap inside him. She thought she was building a new life, fine, but first he would destroy everything she thought she was keeping. The gathering began to disperse. His mother tried to convince him to join them for lunch, but he declined. He had work to do. Goodbye, Tommy, he said softly, placing his untouched white rose on the grave. I promise you she's going to regret not being here today. He walked away from the grave, each step taking him further from the man he'd been, and closer to the man her betrayal had created. His wife thought she was safe in her paradise with her lover. She was about to discover that paradise could become hell. With just a few clicks of a button, the time for grief would come later. Now was the time for revenge. 3 months earlier, the first crack in his wife's facade appeared on a Tuesday evening in March. Sat at the kitchen table, helping Tommy with his dinosaur puzzle while a pot of mac and cheese, the only thing their picky 5-year-old would eat, lately bubbled on the stove. Daddy, this piece doesn't fit. Tommy frowned, holding up a puzzle piece with tiny T-Rex claws. Try turning it around, buddy. Michael glanced at his watch. 7:45 p.m. She was late. Again, footsteps on the stairs announced his wife's arrival. She swept into the kitchen in a black dress he'd never seen before, designer briefcase in hand. The scent of unfamiliar perfume drifted in her wake. Working late again, Michael asked, stirring the mac and cheese. The Morrison merger is killing me, she replied, checking her reflection in the microwave door. Johnson needs these reports by morning. That's the third time this week. He kept his voice neutral even as his mind cataloged the inconsistencies. The new dress, the perfume, the freshly styled hair that somehow hadn't suffered from a full day at the office. What's that supposed to mean? Her tone carried a warning edge. Nothing, just an observation. He turned off the stove. Tommy, dinner's ready. Can we watch Jurassic Park while we eat? Tommy looked up with those big brown eyes, her eyes. Not tonight, champ. But how about we read your new dinosaur book after dinner? I won't be joining you, his wife announced, already heading for the door. Don't wait up, Mommy. Tommy's lower lip trembled. When will you be home? She paused long enough to kiss his forehead. Late, sweetie, but I'll check on you when I get back. The door closed behind her. Michael counted to 10, then pulled out his phone and opened their banking app. There was a charge from Sephora earlier that day. $200 for makeup and perfume she'd supposedly worn to the office that night. After tucking Tommy in with 3 bedtime stories and 2 glasses of water, Michael sat in his home office and began to dig. Credit card statements revealed a pattern he'd been blind to for months. Expensive restaurant charges for 2 on nights she claimed to be working. Hotel bar tabs in the city. A lingerie store purchased from last month. He certainly hadn't seen anything new. His cursor hovered over their phone carrier's website. 1 click, and he could view her detailed call logs. Did he really want to know? Yes. He needed to know. The next morning he called in sick after dropping Tommy at school. Her iPad sat forgotten on the kitchen counter. She'd been in such a rush to make her early meeting. His fingers trembled as he entered Tommy's birthday. The password she used for everything. The screen unlocked. Messages appeared. Hundreds of them, archived in a folder labeled Work Project. His stomach churned as he scrolled through conversations and photos that made him want to vomit. The timestamps match her late meetings perfectly. That a text from last night caught his eye. Last night was amazing. Can't wait for next week's Seattle conference. Will be perfect. No interruptions. Michael's vision blurred. Seattle conference. The same week as her supposed business meeting in Hawaii, that he methodically took screenshots of everything, sending them to his secure email before carefully erasing all traces of his investigation. Then he went to the bathroom and threw up until nothing remained but bitter bile that evening. He watched Tommy chase fireflies in the backyard, his son's laughter a counterpoint to the rage burning in his chest. For Tommy's sake he would say nothing, do nothing. His son deserved a stable home, even if it was built on lies. Daddy, look, I caught one. Tommy held up his cupped hands, the firefly's glow pulsing between his fingers. Michael forced a smile. That's amazing, buddy. You're getting really good at that. Can we show Mommy when she gets home? The firefly might be sleeping by then, but how about we take a picture to show her tomorrow? Tommy nodded eagerly, and Michael snapped a photo of his son's radiant face illuminated by the tiny light in his hands. A moment of pure joy preserved forever. The next weeks became an exercise in controlled fury. He watched her leave 4 meetings wearing clothes he knew she bought for another man. He listened to her phone conversations, now able to decode the real meaning behind her careful words. He documented everything. The breaking point came during Tommy's kindergarten play. He'd been cast as a baby dinosaur in the school spring production. Michael sat in the audience alone, recording the performance on his phone while his wife sent a text about being stuck in traffic later. He found a restaurant charge from that evening. Dinner for 2 at an intimate French bistro across town that night. After Tommy was asleep, Michael began to plan. He spoke with financial advisors under the guise of estate planning. He consulted lawyers about hypothetical scenarios. He gathered evidence, moved assets, and prepared for every contingency, all while maintaining the perfect facade of a loving husband. He kissed her goodbye in the mornings, remembering the taste of lies on her lips. He asked about her day, knowing every answer was false. He played his role flawlessly, all for Tommy's sake, until the diagnosis changed everything. The hospital corridor seemed endless, their antiseptic smell burning Michael's nostrils as he paced outside Tommy's room. His phone displayed the same message he'd sent an hour ago. They want to do more tests. He's asking for you. No response. He knew why she was at a hotel downtown with him. The knowledge sat like acid in his stomach. Mr. Sullivan? The oncologist appeared, clutching a folder. We have the results. The words that followed destroyed his world. Aggressive, advanced, options limited, time short. That he sent another message. Please come. It's important. 20 minutes later, she replied. Stuck in crucial meeting. Can't get away. Keep me posted. That night, as Tommy finally slept, sedated after hours of pain and tears, Michael made his decision. He opened his laptop and began to execute the plan he'd been crafting for months. First, the financial preparations. He'd already documented every transaction, every lie, every betrayal. Now he began moving assets carefully and legally into accounts she couldn't access. The house was in both their names, but his inheritance from his grandfather, the money she thought they'd spent on renovations, sat untouched in a private account. Next, the evidence. He organized everything chronologically: credit card statements, hotel receipts, screenshots of messages, photos she thought were deleted. He created multiple copies stored in various secure locations. Then he started composing emails to her boss, her family, their friends. Each message carefully crafted, each recipient chosen for maximum impact. The emails sat in his drafts folder. Waiting for the right moment, the hospital became his second home. Tommy's condition deteriorated rapidly, each day bringing new challenges, new pain. Michael took leave from work, spending every moment by his son's bedside. She visited occasionally, making appearances between her meetings. Each time, Tommy's face would light up, then fall as she rushed away again, always with the same excuses. "Why is a mommy here more?" Tommy asked one night, his small body racked with fever. "She has to work, buddy," Michael replied, the familiar lie tasting like poison. "But she loves you very much. Can you call her, please?" Michael did, knowing she wouldn't answer. Her phone went straight to voicemail. She never kept it on during her meetings. He documented these moments too. Every missed call, every weak excuse, every time Tommy cried for her. The evidence mounted, a testament to her betrayal not just of him, but of their dying son to in Tommy's final week. Michael sent urgent messages daily. "His condition is worse. The doctors are concerned. He keeps asking for you. Please come." She made brief appearances, always distracted, always rushing away to another emergency meeting. Michael watched her check her phone constantly, knowing who she was messaging. He saw her relief each time she left, escaping back to her parallel life while their son slipped away the night Tommy died. She was in a hotel with him. Michael sat alone, holding his son's hand as the monitors flatlined and the doctors rushed in. He sent one final message. "He's gone." Her response came an hour later. "OMG, on my way," but she never came. Instead, she sent another message the next morning about an emergency business trip to Seattle. The same trip he knew would actually take her to Hawaii with her lover. The funeral arrangements fell to him alone. He chose Tommy's favorite dinosaur book and toy to accompany him. He selected the cemetery plot under the oak tree because Tommy had loved watching squirrels play in their backyard. He wrote the obituary with shaking hands, leaving her name out entirely, his first act of revenge now. As he prepared for the funeral, Michael finished his preparations. The emails were ready. The financial transfers were in place. The evidence was organized. Everything waited for his command. Like missiles in their silos, she thought she was escaping to paradise with her lover. She had no idea she was about to lose everything else. Michael looked at Tommy's last photo, smiling, holding the firefly, forever 5 years old, and felt the last trace of mercy die in his heart. The time for silence was over. The time for revenge had begun. The morning after Tommy's funeral, Michael sat in his home office surrounded by 3 monitors. Each screen displayed a different aspect of his wife's life, the life she thought she'd kept hidden. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he reviewed his plan one final time. His phone buzzed with a message from her, landing in Seattle soon. "How are you holding up?" Michael's laugh held no humor. He opened his tracking software and watched the little that represented her phone moving across the Pacific, heading straight from Maui, not Seattle. "Time to begin," he muttered. Opening his email drafts folder, the first email went to her boss, Richard Morton. Michael had crafted it carefully over the past months, attaching selected screenshots of text messages and hotel receipts. "R. Morton, I believe you should be aware of how company resources and time are being utilized by one of your employees." He attached documentation of every business meeting that had actually been rendezvous with her lover, including expense reports she'd submitted for reimbursement. The hotel bars, the restaurants, all of it. His phone rang. His brother, Tom. "How are you holding up?" Tom asked. "I'm working on something," Michael replied, his voice steady. "Remember that conversation we had about business ethics last month? The hypothetical about employee fraud?" "Yeah, why?" Tom paused. "Wait, are you saying she's in Hawaii right now? Told everyone she's at a conference in Seattle." "Jesus Christ." Tom's voice hardened. "What do you need? Your legal expertise and your discretion. You've got both. Send me what you have." Michael forwarded a set of documents to his brother's law office email. "How long will it take you to review these?" "Give me an hour. Don't do anything until we talk." While waiting for Tom's call, Michael prepared the next phase. He created a separate email account months ago, untraceable to him. From it, he composed messages to her closest friends, family members, and professional contacts as phone rang again. "Everything you've documented is admissible," Tom said without preamble. "The expense report fraud alone could end her career. The rest," he whistled low. "You've been planning this for a while, haven't you, since I found out? Before Tommy got sick?" "Yes." A long pause. "Good. Make her pay." Michael's other phone, a burner, lit up with a text from a number he'd tracked to her lover. "Meeting confirmed for next week. Same place." He smiled coldly. The lover didn't know he'd been getting copies of their messages for months. Time to put that information to use. "Tom, I need one more favor," Michael said. "Remember that private investigator you used in the Martinez case? Already sent you his number. He's expecting your call." Michael hung up and dialed the PI's number. "James Morton speaking. Mr. Morton, my brother Tom referred me. I need documentation of certain activities in Maui this week. Location." Michael rattled off the hotel name and room number he'd found in her forwarded confirmation email. "Timeline, they'll be there 5 days. I need photos, lots of them. Discretion assured. Absolutely necessary. Consider it done." Michael returned to his computer and began the financial phase of his plan. He'd spent months preparing, moving assets gradually to avoid suspicion. Now it was time for the final transfers. His office phone rang. Her company's HR department. "Mr. Sullivan, this is Patricia from HR. We've received some concerning information." "I'm aware," Michael cut in smoothly. I've documented everything thoroughly. Would you like me to send it directly to you, or should it go through legal first? A sharp intake of breath. Legal first, please. And Mr. Sullivan, I'm so sorry about your son. Thank you. His voice remained perfectly controlled. You'll have everything within the hour. He hung up and checked his email. Tom had sent back the legal documents annotated with suggestions. The PI had sent confirmation of his arrival in Maui, and her boss had responded with a single line, meeting in my office. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., Michael allowed himself a small smile. Phase 1 was proceeding exactly as planned. He opened his banking app and began the final transfers. By the time she realized what was happening, their joint accounts would be empty. The assets secured in accounts she couldn't touch. His phone buzzed with another message from her. Seattle is exhausting. Miss you both? Michael didn't bother responding. Instead, he opened the folder containing photos from Tommy's last days in the hospital. Every empty chair where she should have been. Every tearful request from Mommy that went unanswered. Every moment she'd chosen him over their dying son that he attached the photos to a new email draft. This one would go to her lover's family, friends, and business associates. Let them see exactly what kind of person they were dealing with. The sun was setting when his brother called again. It's done, Tom said. HR has everything. Her boss is livid, and I heard through the grapevine that the audit department is launching an investigation into her expense reports. Perfect. Michael leaned back in his chair. Now we wait. She has no idea what's coming. Does she? No. Michael stared at Tommy's photo on his desk. But she will. The next morning, Michael's phone exploded with notifications. His carefully crafted emails had done their work overnight. Spreading through her social and professional networks like a virus, his brother arrived at 8, carrying coffee and a laptop. You'll want to see this, Tom said. Pulling up her company's internal messaging system, he still had access from handling their legal work. It's spreading like wildfire. Michael watched the messages scroll past, employees sharing screenshots of the evidence he'd sent, HR memos about emergency meetings, her boss's thunderous email demanding an immediate return from her Seattle conference. How long until she knows? Tom asked. She's 7 hours behind us in Hawaii, about an hour until she wakes up to this nightmare. Right on schedule, his phone rang. Her best friend Rachel. Michael? Oh my God, I just got these horrible emails about they're all true. He cut in calmly. Every screenshot, every photo, every receipt. But she's in Seattle. No, she's in Maui, with him, while our son was being buried. A sharp gasp. Tommy's funeral. She said she had meetings. Check your email again. I sent you the airline confirmation and hotel booking. 5 days in Hawaii with her lover while our son's body was still warm. Rachel's voice hardened. That fucking bitch. Feel free to share that information with anyone who asks. More calls poured in. Family members, friends, colleagues. Michael answered each one the same way. Calm, collected, armed with irrefutable evidence, his burner phone lit up with a message from the PI in Maui. Targets acquired. First set of photos incoming. The images showed his wife and her lover having breakfast on their hotel balcony, looking relaxed and happy, as if their son hadn't been buried yesterday. Perfect timing, Michael murmured, forwarding the photos to her entire contact list. Tom whistled low. You're really going for the jugular. She hasn't seen anything yet. His phone rang again. Her mother. How dare you spread these lies about my daughter, she screeched. Check your email, Michael replied coldly. I just sent you photos taken less than an hour ago. Your daughter's having breakfast in Maui with her lover while her son's grave is still fresh. Still want to talk about lies? Silence. Then in a broken voice, she told me she was in Seattle. She tells a lot of stories. Check the other attachment screenshots of her text with him during Tommy's last days in the hospital. While you were asking why she wasn't there for her dying son, she was in hotel rooms with him. More silence followed by a choked sob. I need to call her father. Give him my number if he wants proof. I have plenty. The morning wore on. Michael watched his plan unfold through calls, texts, and emails. Her professional reputation crumbled as the evidence of expense fraud circulated through her company. Her social circle imploded as friends discovered her web of lies. Her family reeled from the proof of her betrayal during Tommy's illness and death. His phone buzzed a text from her. Why isn't my credit card working? Then another, Michael, the hotel says our joint account is empty. What's going on? And another, my boss is calling. Something about an emergency. Are you doing this? Michael didn't respond. Instead, he sent another batch of photos to her lover's wife. Yes, he discovered that particular detail months ago. The man wasn't just having an affair with Michael's wife. He was cheating on his own spouse. Tom looked up from his laptop. Her company's legal department just opened a formal investigation. And the audit team's preliminary report, it's bad, Michael. Really bad. Good? Michael checked his watch. Time for phase 3. Hit her with everything. Michael opened his email and began forwarding the hospital photos, documents of every missed visit, every ignored call, every time she chose her lover over their dying son. He sent them to everyone. Her friends, family, colleagues, neighbors, everyone who had attended Tommy's funeral, everyone who had sent condolences, everyone who needed to know exactly why she hadn't been there. His phone lit up with her face, her first direct call. What have you done? She whispered. I've told the truth, he replied calmly. Something you should try sometime. Michael, please, how's Maui? Better than Seattle. A sharp intake of breath. You don't understand? I understand perfectly. I've understood for months. Every lie, every betrayal, every time you chose him over Tommy. That's not fair. Fair. His voice turned to ice. Was it fair when our son cried for you in the hospital while you were in a hotel with your lover? Was it fair when you missed his funeral for a Hawaiian vacation? I can explain. Save it for HR and your lover's wife. Oh, and your parents. They're especially interested in those photos of you at breakfast this morning. The ones taken at the same time they were laying flowers on their grandson's grave. You're destroying my life, she whispered. No, Michael corrected her. You destroyed it yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows exactly who you are. He hung up and turned to Tom. How long until her company suspends her? Tom checked his phone. Just came through. Suspended without pay. Pending investigation. Perfect. Michael opened his laptop. Now about those assets. As evening approached, Michael received another update from the PI in Maui. The photo showed his wife arguing with her lover by the hotel pool. Their faces twisted with anger. Trouble in paradise? Tom asked, looking over his shoulder. Right on schedule, Michael replied. Once the money runs out, watch how quickly he abandons her. His phone buzzed with a message from the lover's wife. Thank you for telling me the truth. I've frozen our accounts and contacted my lawyer. Michael forwarded this message to his wife's lover, watching the chaos unfold from 3,000 miles away. Within minutes, his PI sent new photos the lover storming out of the hotel room. Wheeling his suitcase behind him, the calls had slowed to a trickle, but each one brought news of another relationship destroyed. Another connection severed. Her closest friend Rachel called again, fury in her voice. I just found out she was with him the night. I watched Tommy so she could work late, Rachel spat. I kept her secret for months without knowing it. I helped her betray you and Tommy. Don't blame yourself, Michael said. She fooled a lot of people, not anymore. I sent those photos to everyone in our mother's group. No one will speak to her again. His wife's number flashed on his phone again. He let it go to voicemail, then played it on speaker. Michael, please. Her voice cracked. He left. The hotel wants payment. My cards aren't working. I can't even buy a plane ticket home. My boss won't answer my calls. My parents, a sob. What am I supposed to do? Figure it out, he muttered. Deleting the message, Tom looked up from his laptop. Her company's investigation is moving fast. They found evidence of fraud going back months. Falsified expense reports, unauthorized charges, company resources used to facilitate the affair. Send it to her industry contacts, Michael directed. Make sure everyone knows why she was fired. Already done. No one will hire her after this. Michael's phone lit up with another call. Her father this time. I've removed her from my will, the older man said without preamble. No daughter of mine would abandon her dying child for an affair. I understand. Do you need anything? Money for Tommy's expenses, no, but thank you. More messages poured in from her social circle, each one severing another connection. The mothers from Tommy's school, her college friends, her professional network, all responding to the evidence with disgust and anger. His burner phone buzzed a message from her lover. This is your fault. You've ruined everything. Michael smiled coldly and forwarded the message to the man's wife, along with photos of him abandoning his mistress at the hotel. Let him try to explain that during the divorce. Another voicemail from his wife. Everyone's turned against me. My boss, my friends, my own parents. How could you do this? We could have handled this privately. Michael deleted it without responding. Instead, he sent another batch of evidence to her remaining contacts. Anyone who might still be willing to help her. Every bridge would burn. Every door would close that Tom's phone buzzed. Her company's making it official. Termination for cause effective immediately. They're filing criminal charges for the expense fraud. Perfect timing, Michael said, opening his email. Ready for the final blow. Tom nodded grimly. Michael began forwarding the last set of photos, the ones from Tommy's final days. His small body in the hospital bed, the empty chair where she should have been, the nurse's logs documenting every time she didn't show up. Each image accompanied by proof of where she'd actually been. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, timestamps matching her text with her lover. Think anyone will stand by her after seeing these? Tom asked quietly. Would you? His phone lit up one last time, her number again. This time he answered. What do you want? I have nothing left, she whispered. No money, no job, no friends. Even my parents won't speak to me. Please. You had everything, he cut in coldly. A husband who loved you. A beautiful son who adored you. A good job. Friends. Family. But you threw it all away for cheap hotel rooms and lies. I'll do anything. There's nothing left to do. Your lover's gone. Your job's gone. Every friend you had knows what you did to Tommy. Every family member has seen how you chose a cheap affair over your dying son. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she sobbed. The affair. It just happened. I never thought. You never thought you'd get caught, Michael interrupted. You never thought I'd find out about the hotels, the lies, the fraud. You never thought I'd discover you were with him while our son died alone. Please, I'm begging you. I beg to. His voice turned razor sharp. I beg you to come to the hospital when Tommy cried for you. I beg you to be there for his last breath. I beg you to attend your own son's funeral. How did that work out? A long silence broken only by her muffled sobs. I can change, she whispered finally. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix. While you were building your new life with him, I was planning my future without you. Michael's voice remained steady, emotionless. Enjoy your nothingness. He ended the call and turned to Tom. It's done. Tom nodded grimly. The PI says she's alone at the hotel bar. Her lover's on a flight back to his wife. Her company's attorneys have contacted me about pressing charges for the fraud. Good. Michael opened his laptop one final time. Now for the last piece. He drafted a simple email to her family, friends, and colleagues. To anyone still wondering about the truth, attached are the final photos. The first set shows my wife with her lover during Tommy's last days in the hospital. The second set shows her at a luxury resort in Maui yesterday while we buried our son. That I don't ask for sympathy or support. I only ask that you remember Tommy and how his mother chose to spend his final days. Michael, he hit send and closed the laptop. What now? Tom asked quietly. Michael stood and walked to the window, looking out at the setting sun. Now I focus on honoring Tommy's memory. She can live with the consequences of her choices. His phone buzzed one final time, a message from her. I have nothing left. Michael didn't respond. Instead, he pulled up the last photo he'd taken of Tommy, smiling despite the hospital tubes and wires, asking when Mommy would visit. You're wrong, he whispered to the empty room. You had everything. You just didn't value it enough to keep it. A week after Tommy's funeral, Michael's phone lit up with a message from the airport security guard he'd befriended. She's back. Looking rough, Michael checked the time. 3:47 a.m. Perfect. He made sure she couldn't afford a better flight. His brother Tom called minutes later. Airport security just spotted her. Want me to have someone follow? No need, Michael replied, sitting in his darkened home office. She'll figure out soon enough there's nowhere left to go. The PI's final report from Maui had painted a satisfying picture. Her lover abandoning her at the hotel, her desperate attempts to use frozen credit cards, the humiliation of begging the hotel manager not to call the police over the unpaid bill. In the end, her parents had sent a one-way ticket home economy class with 3 layovers. That Michael's phone buzzed again. Rachel, his wife's former best friend. She just tried to call me. Rachel's voice dripped with disgust. I blocked her number. How many others did she try? Everyone. No one's answering. Her sister told me their parents changed the locks and left for their cabin. They don't want to see her. Michael smiled coldly. Any word from her company? The audit team finished their investigation. Criminal charges are being filed next week. Her professional license is already suspended. The sound of a car door slamming outside caught his attention. Michael moved to the window, watching a taxi pull away from their house, their former house. He'd moved out days ago, leaving only what the divorce papers specified she could claim. His phone lit up with her number. He let it ring. Her voice trembled in the voicemail. Michael, I'm outside our house. My key doesn't work. Please, I have nowhere else to go. He deleted the message and dialed Tom. She's here. Right on schedule, Tom replied. Want me to call the police? Not yet. Let her understand exactly what she's lost first. More pounding on the door, more calls, more desperate voicemails. Please, Michael. Everything's gone. My job, my friends, my family. I can't even access my own bank accounts. What am I supposed to do? Delete. The hotel bills maxed out my credit cards. He left me there, Michael. Just walked out. Please, I need help. Delete. Our son's toys are in there. His clothes, his pictures. You can't keep me from his things. I'm his mother. That one made Michael's hand clench around the phone. He pulled up the photos from Tommy's last hospital stay and forwarded them to her with a single line of text. A mother would have been there. The pounding stopped. He watched through the window as she slumped against the front door, illuminated by the motion sensor light. Her designer clothes wrinkled and stained from days of travel. His phone buzzed. Her lover's wife. Thought you'd want to know? The woman said without preamble. He's begging to come home. It's where she meant nothing, that she was just convenient. Are you taking him back? A harsh laugh. No. But I'm enjoying watching him lose everything, just like you planned. The divorce papers hit him hard. Losing his partnership at the firm hit harder. Good. Thank you, she added softly, for telling me the truth. Michael ended the call and watched his wife through the window. She was trying to see through the front windows now, pressing her face against the glass like a ghost locked out of her own life. His phone lit up with another message from her. At least let me get my things, that he replied, with a photo of the moving company's receipt showing her clothes and personal items have been placed in storage, along with the storage facility's address and the bill for 6 months' rent. It was the only reply she would get from him. More buzzing, more voicemails, more deletion around dawn. Police lights flashed at the end of the street. Michael had arranged this too. An anonymous call about a suspicious person prowling around a private residence that he watched through the window as 2 officers approached her. Watch her desperate attempts to explain. Watch them check her ID and run it through their system. His phone buzzed one final time that morning. Tom. Her arrest warrant just hit the system, his brother said. The fraud charges are official. Michael watched the officers help her into the back of their car, not roughly, but with the firm inevitability of justice long delayed. Good, he replied. Let her explain to a judge why she thought company funds should pay for hotel rooms with her lover while our son died alone. The police car pulled away, carrying her toward the consequences of her choices. Michael closed the blinds and turned to his laptop, where Tommy's smiling face lit up the screen. Phase 1 of justice for you, buddy, he whispered. But we're not done yet. The county courthouse loomed gray and imposing in the morning light. Michael straightened his tie as he walked up the steps, Tom at his side. You sure you want to be here for this? Tom asked. I want to see her face when they read the charges." Inside, the courtroom was already filling her former colleagues, friends, and family members drawn by the spectacle of her fall. Michael took a seat in the back, watching as she was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit. Her designer clothes and perfect makeup replaced by bare feet and hollow eyes, her court-appointed lawyer looked overwhelmed. No surprise, Michael had made sure every private attorney in town had a conflict of interest. All rise. The proceedings moved quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. Fraudulent expense reports, misused company funds, falsified documents. Each charge another nail in the coffin of her former life. When they read the amount, over $50,000 spent on hotels and meals with her lover, an audible gasp went through the courtroom. "How does the defendant plead?" Her voice cracked. "Guilty." Michael watched without expression as she accepted a plea deal. 6 months in county jail, full restitution, 5 years probation. Her professional license would be permanently revoked outside the courtroom. Her father approached Michael. "We've removed her from the will," the older man said quietly. "Everything goes to Tommy's Memorial Foundation now. He'd appreciate that." "We're moving away," her mother added, appearing at her husband's side. "Sold the house. We can't stay here after what she did." Michael nodded. More collateral damage from her choices. His phone buzzed. "Rachel." "Just saw the news," she said when he answered. 6 months seems light. "The jail time doesn't matter," Michael replied. "She's lost everything else. No career, no friends, no family, no future." "Good." Back at his new apartment, Michael opened his laptop to check the latest developments. Her lover's divorce was proceeding rapidly. His wife had hired the city's most aggressive attorney. His law firm had asked for his resignation. His own family had publicly disowned him. Tom arrived with dinner and updates. Her apartment application was rejected. He reported setting down Chinese takeout containers. All 3 of them. No one will rent to her once she's out. Her old position filled, and HR sent warnings to every company in the industry. "She's unhireable." Michael nodded, picking at his food. "Any word from her friends?" Rachel organized something called a warning network. Every time she tries to connect with someone new, they get anonymous photos from Tommy's last days. No one will touch her. The next morning, Michael drove to the cemetery. Tommy's grave was covered in fresh flowers from everyone except his mother. "It's done, buddy," Michael said softly, placing a small dinosaur next to the headstone. "She'll never hurt anyone like she hurt you again." His phone buzzed to collect call from the county jail. He declined it. Later that week, Tom brought more news. She tried to contact her old clients. Someone leaked those photos of her in Maui during Tommy's funeral. Her professional network is destroying itself to get away from her. Perfect. Michael checked his watch. "Time for the final piece?" Tom nodded grimly. Michael opened his email and began composing the last message he would ever send about her. He attached photos spanning months, her empty chair at Tommy's hospital bed, timestamp messages to her lover during critical medical procedures, hotel receipts matching the dates of missed visits, and finally the damning images from Maui during the funeral. The recipient list included every contact she had left, every potential connection, every possible avenue of escape. He added a simple message: "Before you welcome her into your life, remember how she treated her dying son. Remember what she chose instead of attending his funeral. Remember that some people never change. They just find new victims. The photos tell the truth. What you do with it is up to you, Sin." "That's it?" Tom asked quietly. Michael nodded, closing his laptop. "That's it. She made her choice that day in Maui. Now she can live with it." 6 months passed like a slow turning page. Michael focused on building his new life, channeling his energy into Tommy's Memorial Foundation. The charity helped families with children in long-term hospital care, ensuring no child would lie alone while their parent chose something else. The morning of her release dawned cold and gray. Michael stood at his office window, watching the city wake up. His phone buzzed. Rachel. She tried reaching out on social media, Rachel reported. Every account was banned within hours. "Those photos of her during Tommy's funeral are everywhere." "Good." The mothers group started a warning system. Anytime she tries to make new friends, they make sure the truth comes out. Michael's other phone lit up. Tom. Her job applications were all rejected, his brother said without preamble. "Every company in her field has blacklisted her. The fraud conviction and license revocation are permanent. Her lover, divorced, disgraced, living in a studio apartment after his wife took everything. He won't take her calls either." Michael ended both calls and opened his email. A message from her father. "We've sold the house. Moving cross-country. Please don't tell her where." Delete. Another from her former boss. "The industry warning about her went national. She'll never work in this field again." Delete. Got a notification from his bank. The last of Tommy's medical bills paid in full. Below it, a reminder that her accounts remained frozen, her credit destroyed, her assets gone. His phone buzzed again. An unknown number. "You've taken everything." Her voice was hollow, broken. "My career, my friends, my family. What am I supposed to do now?" "You still don't understand," Michael replied calmly. "I didn't take anything. You threw it all away the moment you chose him over Tommy." "I made a mistake." "No. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. What you did was a choice. Every time you left our dying son alone to meet your lover, that was a choice. Missing his funeral for a Hawaiian vacation, that was a choice." "Please," she whispered. "I have nothing left." "Now you understand how Tommy felt." lying in that hospital bed, calling for his mommy, not understanding why she chose someone else over him. Silence, broken only by muffled sobs. I loved you once, Michael continued, his voice cold. But the moment you abandoned our son, you became nothing to me. Now you're nothing to everyone else too. Live with it. He ended the call and blocked the number. Later that week, Michael drove to his favorite spot, a peaceful overlook where he and Tommy used to watch the sunset. The autumn wind carried the scent of approaching winter. His phone lit up with messages he didn't bother reading. Please, I need help. No one will hire me. I'm sleeping in my car. Just tell me what you want me to do. Each one a reminder of choices made and prices paid. That Tom's weekly update arrived. She tried opening a new account at a local bank. They saw the fraud conviction and turned her away. She's completely cut off. Good. Michael watched the sun sink toward the horizon. Anywhere from her family? They've disappeared, changed numbers, moved away, left no forwarding address. She's tried reaching out through mutual friends, but no one will help her. Michael nodded, pulling up the last photo he had of Tommy smiling despite the hospital tubes, his stuffed dinosaur clutched tight. I did it, buddy, he whispered. She'll never hurt anyone like she hurt you again. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Tommy had loved sunsets, always insisting they stayed until the last light faded. That Michael's phone buzzed one final time. Rachel. Just wanted you to know, she said quietly. The foundation helped 3 families this month. 3 children who won't be alone because of what you built from this. Tommy would have liked that. Yes, Rachel agreed. He would have. Michael ended the call and stood at the overlook, watching darkness claim the sky. Behind him lay the wreckage of his old life, a faithless wife reduced to nothing, a lover destroyed by his own betrayal, a network of friends and family who would never trust her again. Before him stretched a new path illuminated by Tommy's memory. Not happiness perhaps, but purpose. Not forgiveness, but justice. His phone remained silent now. There was nothing left to say. She had chosen her path that day in Maui, and now she would walk it alone, just as Tommy had walked his final days without her. Michael turned away from the overlook and walked to his car. The foundation had work to do, children to help, families to support. That Tommy's legacy would be one of love and presence, not betrayal and absence. And somewhere out there, his wife, no, his ex-wife, would spend the rest of her life understanding exactly what she had thrown away, that it was finished. And it was enough.